Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a story that kind of makes you wonder, how far someone might go to reach their dreams, even if it means, not being completely truthful.
Yeah, absolutely. This case really brings up questions about ambition, desperation, what people will do, especially when you're dealing with, people's health.
Okay, so let's set the stage. Imagine, uh, imagine you're in the Philippines and there's this nurse, seems totally qualified, years of experience, has been taking care of you or your loved ones for years, and then bam, you find out that their credentials were fake this whole time.
Wow.
That's the situation. That's what we're diving into today.
Yeah.
The case of Civil Service Commission versus Marilou T. Rodriguez,
Yeah.
248255, decided on August 27, 2020.
Okay.
And it's a story that really unfolds over decades, so it's a wild ride.
Oh, wow. A wild ride. Okay.
So it starts back in 1988 when Marilou Rodriguez took the nursing licensure exam, or
Yeah.
NLE as it's known. This exam is absolutely crucial for anyone who, wants to be a registered nurse here in the Philippines.
Right.
So she takes the exam and
Well, she didn't pass. And that's where things get interesting
uh,
because even though she didn't pass, Marilou applied for a nursing job the very next year at the Davao Oriental Provincial Hospital. And get this, she got the job.
wait, how is that even possible? I mean, did they check her credentials?
You'd think, right? But Marilou, she presented what turned out to be a fake PRC identification card, claiming she had passed the NLE with a score of 79.6%.
Wow, that's pretty bold.
Yeah, bold move for sure.
Okay, so she gets the job based on totally false information.
Yeah.
What happened next? Did she just keep up the charade?
For a surprisingly long time, actually. Marilou worked at the hospital for over 10 years
What?
and even got promoted to nurse the second, all while working under, false pretenses.
Wow.
And it wasn't until 2001 when she was being considered for another promotion that the truth started to come out.
Sounds like she was living on borrowed time.
Yeah.
So what happened? What was her downfall? Was it like an anonymous tip or something?
Not really, no. It was more of a bureaucratic requirement. When Marilou needed to submit an updated license for that promotion, the hospital realized something wasn't quite right. They contacted the Professional Regulation Commission, or PRC, the body that oversees nursing licenses here, and well, you can probably guess what happened next.
I'm guessing they discovered the fake ID in her actual exam results.
Exactly.
So what happened to Marilou? Was she immediately fired?
She actually resigned from the hospital in 2002 before any formal action was taken. But
Yeah.
that wasn't the end of the story.
Okay.
Marilou decided to retake the NLE, and this time she actually passed.
So she finally became a legitimate nurse.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean she was in the clear?
Not quite. See, she worked abroad for a while, but when she returned to the Philippines in 2013 and got another nursing job, the past kind of caught up with her.
Oh no.
The Civil Service Commission, or CSC, launched an investigation into her previous employment at the provincial hospital.
Ah, so even though she was a licensed nurse now, those earlier years working under false pretenses still came back to haunt her.
Yeah, that's right.
So what was the outcome of the CSC's investigation?
They found her guilty of serious dishonesty, grave misconduct, and conduct prejudicial to the best interests of the service.
Wow, that's a pretty serious set of charges.
It is, especially for someone in a profession that really requires public trust.
Right, right. I bet she tried to appeal that decision, right?
She did.
I mean, people don't usually just accept those kinds of charges, lying down.
Yeah, she definitely fought back, and that's where the legal battle really heats up. The case went all the way to the Court of Appeals, and surprisingly, they initially sided with Marilou.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm surprised. What was their reasoning?
Well, the Court of Appeals believed that she had acted in good faith, meaning they thought she genuinely believed her fake ID was real, and that she had shown remorse by resigning from the hospital back in 2002. They even ordered her to be reinstated to her nursing position.
Wow, that's a pretty big win for Marilou.
It was.
It sounds like she was about to get away with it.
It seemed that way.
But I have a feeling this isn't the end of the story.
You're right, there's another twist.
Okay.
The CSC wasn't satisfied with the Court of Appeals decision and decided to appeal it to the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court of the Philippines.
Oh, wait.
And that's where things took a dramatic turn.
Okay, so before we Before we get to the Supreme Court's decision, I think it's important for our listeners to understand, the key question the court had to grapple with.
Yeah.
What was the real core issue at the heart of this case?
Well, essentially, the Supreme Court had to decide whether Marilou's actions, despite eventually becoming a licensed nurse, constituted a serious enough offense to warrant her dismissal from public service.
Right.
They had to weigh her initial deception against her later efforts to rectify her mistake and become a qualified professional. It's a really complex issue with no easy answers.
And how did the Supreme Court rule? What was their final verdict in this long and winding legal saga? So the Supreme Court had to weigh her eventual qualification against that decade of deception.
Right.
So what was their final verdict?
Well, the Supreme Court actually overturned the Court of Appeals decision, and they sided with the CSC. They found Marilou guilty of serious dishonesty, grave misconduct, and conduct prejudicial to the best interest of the service.
Wow.
They upheld her dismissal from her nursing position, canceled her eligibility, forfeited her retirement benefits except for, accrued leave credits, and permanently barred her from holding public office or taking civil service exams.
Wow, that's a huge reversal.
Yeah, it was a big one.
So what was the reasoning, for such a strong stance from the Supreme Court?
Well, the Supreme Court really dug into the specifics of the case.
Okay.
They highlighted a few key points. First, they pointed out that the nursing law at the time didn't have a what they called a deferred status option, which is what Marilou had claimed.
Right.
So her argument that she thought she was still, eligible even though she hadn't passed the exam, it didn't hold up.
Okay.
They also emphasized that the PRC ID number she used belonged to someone else entirely, and she never even bothered to verify its authenticity.
So basically the court said, ignorance is not a defense.
Right. Exactly.
It seems like they were really, sending a message about personal responsibility and due diligence.
Absolutely, yeah. They underlined that good faith isn't just about believing something. It's also about taking, reasonable steps to make sure that what you believe is true, especially when it comes to something as important as professional credentials.
Right.
And the court found that Marilou's actions, particularly, using someone else's ID number, showed a deliberate attempt to deceive.
It does sound a little more like intentional deceit rather than just a, misunderstanding or something.
Yeah.
So did they cite any legal precedents to support their decision?
They did. The Supreme Court referenced a couple important cases that really helped, clarify their stance.
Okay.
First, they brought up Civil Service Commission v. Kyobit. This case established that you can't just, claim good faith without any solid proof. It's not enough to just say, oh, I thought it was okay. You need to actually have, evidence to back up your claim.
Right. You can't just plead ignorance and expect to be, off the hook, especially when you're dealing with something as serious as professional licensing.
Right.
What was the other case they mentioned?
Oh, they also cited Manibo v. Court of Appeals.
Okay.
That's a case where someone's claim of good faith was rejected because their certificate of eligibility didn't match the official records.
Okay.
Essentially, the Supreme Court was saying, look, you knew you didn't pass the exam, you used a fake ID, you worked as a nurse illegally for years. Good faith doesn't really hold up here.
Okay, so they were kind of drawing parallels between Marilou's situation and these previous cases, to show a pattern of deliberate deception.
Right.
It seems like a pretty solid legal argument.
Yeah, it is.
Did the Supreme Court did they consider that Marilou eventually did pass the NLE and worked legitimately for a while?
They did. They considered all of those factors.
Okay.
But ultimately, they decided that the severity of her initial actions, especially the length of time she practiced without a license, and the potential danger to patients, it outweighed her later efforts.
So even though she eventually became qualified, they felt that the risks she posed during those 10 years were just too significant to ignore.
That's right.
It really makes you think about the ethical implications, not just the legal ones.
Absolutely.
So they also highlighted the importance of Republic Act 877, the Philippine nursing law, which clearly states that you need a valid certificate of registration to practice nursing in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And Marilou didn't have that for over a decade.
Right, over 10 years.
And that put her patients at risk.
Yeah.
I mean, potentially, even life-threatening risk.
Yeah, that's a serious issue.
It is. Yes.
The Supreme Court also brought up another interesting case, Remolona v. Civil Service Commission, and this case emphasized that even if dishonesty isn't directly related to your, current job, it can still impact your right to be in public service.
Okay.
It's about overall character and integrity. It's not just a single incident.
Right. They were saying public service requires this like a higher level of trust.
Mm-hmm.
And past actions, even those outside your current position, can be relevant. It's not just about what you do now. It's about, who you are as a person.
Exactly.
That's a pretty significant point.
It is.
It is.
This case really highlights the importance of honesty and professional ethics, especially in fields like nursing, where people's lives are literally on the line.
It's not just about, paperwork. It's about the responsibility that comes with those credentials.
Exactly.
Exactly.
What's fascinating to me is that the court didn't just focus on the legal aspects, but they really delved into the ethical implications, sending this clear message that upholding professional standards is absolutely paramount, regardless of, personal circumstances.
The Supreme Court's decision, I think, is saying that the integrity of the profession relies on individual accountability.
Right.
Like, this isn't just Marilou Rodriguez.
Wow.
It's about safeguarding, the nursing profession as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
and showing public trust in healthcare.
Yeah, absolutely. This case, it underscores the long-term consequences of our actions and the importance of making, ethical choices, even when faced with difficult circumstances.
Right.
What stands out to you in this case? What are your thoughts on all this?
What strikes me most is the question of intent.
Okay.
Was Marilou driven purely by desperation, to provide for herself and her family, or was there a deeper disregard for the profession and the well-being of her patients?
Right.
It's something to ponder, isn't it? What are your thoughts? It really does. It really makes you think about, those choices and the weight of those choices, not just for, for the individual, but for the whole profession.
It does, and it reminds us that we shouldn't just accept things at face value. It's
Right.
crucial to think critically about information, especially when it comes to something as important as healthcare.
Absolutely. Like, if something feels off, it's always worth, digging a little deeper, asking questions, seeking clarification.
Yeah, I agree with that. This case also, it highlights the need for really robust systems to verify credentials and prevent this kind of thing from happening in the first place.
Yeah.
Imagine all the resources that could have been saved if they had more effective, checks and balances in place early on.
Yeah, that's a great point. It makes you wonder if there were any systemic failures that allowed this to go on for so long.
Mm-hmm.
It also makes you think about the responsibility of healthcare institutions, to thoroughly vet their employees.
Right. They're ultimately responsible for the safety and well-being of their patients.
Mm-hmm.
So this case serves as as kind of a wake-up call for hospitals and clinics to make sure they have, these stringent verification processes.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just rely on self-reported information. They need to be actively, cross-checking with official records.
It also makes you think about the role of regulatory bodies like the PRC.
Yeah.
Do they even have the resources, and the authority to effectively monitor and enforce professional standards?
Yeah, those are really important questions to consider. This case definitely, it puts a spotlight on the need for strong regulatory oversight,
Right.
To maintain the integrity of the professions and protect the public.
So we've talked about the legal and ethical implications of this case, but what about the human element? It's easy to get caught up in the legal arguments, but at the end of the day, this is about real people.
That's true. It's important to remember that Marilou Rodriguez was a person
Right.
with her own, motivations and struggles and perhaps even regrets.
Right.
And this case is it's a reminder that actions have consequences,
Mm-hmm.
but it also invites us to consider the complexities of of human behavior.
It's a reminder that, there's always more to the story than meets the eye.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, this deep dive has definitely given us a lot to think about.
It has.
It's a story that really kind of stays with you long after you've heard the details.
I agree.
If this case has sparked any thoughts or questions for you, please share them in the comments. We'd love to hear your perspectives on this this really complex issue.
And don't forget to like and favorite this episode if you found it insightful.
And to make sure you don't miss our next deep dive into another fascinating topic, hit that subscribe button.
Yeah, and until next time, keep those brains engaged and stay curious.